Hello and welcome to the John Ark Show. Today we're going to interview motion picture distributor Linda Nelson. She's the CEO and co-founder of a company called Indie Rights. It's a film distribution company that is partnered with Amazon, Google, Tubi, Roku, Vimeo, and other premium streaming services. She has the experience and trust of the marketplace and uses it to help filmmakers get their movies to market. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel for free. You can also like, comment, and follow us. We're going to have a lot of great celebrity interviews coming up, so make sure to click on that notification bell so you can be notified every time we upload a new show. Also, we ask that you post a link to today's show on all your social media to help get the word out. Now, let's say hello to Linda Nelson. Hi, Linda. Welcome to the John Ark Show. How are you today?
I'm fantastic, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's our pleasure and our honor. So, Linda, you're a very successful and respected film distributor who has a lot of experience distributing indie films. A lot of people don't realize this, but if you produce an indie film and you want to get it on a major streaming platform, you pretty much have to use a film distributor to get it on Netflix or Hulu, Amazon, YouTube, and the other platforms. Would you agree that that is the nature of the marketplace these days?
Yes, if you have a film, especially a professional grade film, you want it to get the most exposure possible. So while you might be able to get it up on one or two platforms yourself, and not the most premium ones for sure, you're much better off to work with a distributor, 100%.
Okay. Now, does a lot of your leverage come with the fact that you are able to aggregate so many films and bring them to the marketplace, so they see you as somebody who makes their job easier?
Well, absolutely. And for a number of reasons. One, our content partners like Amazon and Tubi, for example, they count on us to curate. So in other words, while we probably get maybe 10 submissions a day, we pick the best. And so our content partners are very, glad that we actually act as a screening, opportunity for them so that they don't have to look at every one of those films. And it also means that in addition to us curating for them, they also can count on us for deal flow. In other words, we're not just going to give them one film and disappear. So we're going to give them content on a continuing basis. So those are the two main reasons why they'll prefer to deal with a distributor that they trust and have a good relationship with. And Indie Rights, we were fortunate to get into the business so early. We've been partners with platforms like Amazon and Google Play and Tubi for more than 10 years.
So let's say you receive X number of films per month. What percentage of X pass your scrutiny and you deem commercially viable?
We take on average 2 a week. It's quite a low percentage in comparison to maybe the 10 a day that might get submitted, but we're very popular with brand new filmmakers. So we tend to get a lot of first films and low budget films. And a lot of times they aren't quite ready for the big time yet.
Tell us what the industry was like before the economic lockdown in 2020, and what is it like now?
Well, the best thing to do is talk about what happened during the lockdown.
All right.
Our company actually kind of doubled in size almost every year from the time we started. We started with 8 films in 2006. And because our deal has remained the absolute same since we started the company, we have an initial term of only 3 years, and then it automatically renews unless a filmmaker wants to leave. But we have a retention rate of about 98%. So our catalog has just grown and grown and grown. So we now have over 1,500 films in our catalog. And so by the time we got to the lockdown, we had a very healthy supply of content. And what happened during the lockdown was everyone was forced to stay at home. They could no longer go to football games or concerts, and so because they were at home, the number of people that were streaming actually about doubled. So all of a sudden, and I'm talking primarily about the United States right now. I'm not exactly clear if that same thing happened in Europe or globally, but certainly in the United States, the number of people that started to stream movies doubled. And so we had a very, very busy time during COVID. And so because we had such growth then, it's kind of leveled out a little bit right now.
So there are an estimated 200 movie streaming services out there worldwide now, or so we're told. Who knows? How many of them do you think will still be in business 5 years from now?
20.
Yeah, I think so too.
No.
So
I think we're going to see a mass consolidation, even among the big players. For example, NBC Universal has 3 streaming channels, and there really isn't any reason for them to have 3 streaming channels. So they have Fandango, and they have Vudu, right? For example, and so they acquired Vudu from Walmart, and so I think they're going to even consolidate within themselves, studios. And of course, the studios are in a really good position, to control a good amount of the market. Although I have to say that now we see that the tech companies like Amazon and Apple and Google and Netflix, they're solidly competing with the major studios, the 6 major studios that used to control the market. So they're really, they're running neck and neck. I mean, and even in theatrical. I mean, you see now companies like Netflix and Amazon have Oscar contenders, and so it's a deeper market than it was before, because we now have all these tech companies, but that are streaming. But now all of the studios have finally gotten in on the game. They were very late. They were probably 10 years late getting into streaming. So for them, rather than start a new streaming service, they would purchase an existing one. For example, Fox purchased Tubi because Tubi was the most, the most successful AVOD. And so rather than start over and make their own AVOD channel, Fox said, okay, we're just going to go out and we're going to acquire Tubi. So you're going to see this consolidation. And, there's way too many channels right now. And actually, on Roku, there's over 1,000 channels.
So if I'm on a streaming service and just shuffling through looking for something, and I pick something, I can tell within a minute or two whether this is garbage or not. And I think a lot of people can. Is that something that you've developed a sense for? Do you have to watch a lot of a movie, a part of a movie, or can you just tell from the trailer whether this is economically not feasible?
Well, we have an acquisition team, and because we now have such great cameras, the technology has become very inexpensive. It means that there's a lot more content being produced. So now just about anybody can easily buy a camera that's going to produce very good quality looking, content. So it means that we have to really look at the story and the acting, right, in more depth actually than we did before. Before we could just look at the quality, and if the production quality was terrible, we could know in 5 seconds, oh no, this is never gonna make it because the production quality is not good. But now, because the production quality can be so good, we have to look a little harder to make sure that we have something that's going to meet our criteria. And we really want to see that there is good story first. You've got to have good story, good script. You've got to have good acting. and you've got to have good production value with, both audio and cinematography. I mean, you've got both of those have to be really, really good. And the story thing is so important. And these days, and more movies are being watched on AVOD, ad supported, and people, because they're not paying up front to watch the content, if they're not engaged immediately, it bounce out. So we really look for films that, are engaging with their audience very quickly. It used to be you could take your time and build this nice, beautiful story slowly, and build up with a crescendo, and you can't do that now. People get bored and they bounce out like very quickly. So, those are things that we watch for.
Even if you watch some of the movies from the 70s, the classics, the masterpieces, Godfather, some of the other movies, you'll notice the tempo and the timing is slower. That's
Yes.
good sometimes, but you can't keep people if the entire movie moves at that pace. You know.
Right.
So I'm guessing you can't leave the house and get more than 10 feet or so without some college kid jumping out of the bushes trying to get you to watch his indie flick. Is that the case, or is that not the case?
Well, it's not that I have to leave the house, but we are just getting a huge volume of submissions on our website. We make it really easy for filmmakers to find us. So we're very fortunate to have a very good reputation. And so I try to do a couple of podcasts a year and interviews like this so that I can, talk to filmmakers and it really brings out a lot of people too.
So we're hearing from indie filmmakers that some streaming companies, which I shall not name, are taking years to reimburse filmmakers, as long as 4 years before they get their first payment. How is that possible? Is that just a sign of how much leverage they have, or are they just trying to kill filmmakers left and right by not paying them for years?
Are you talking about distributors or streaming platforms?
Well, these streaming platforms are not paying the filmmakers for years at a time. So, it used to be that some streamers would pay you on a yearly basis, but now we hear that one streaming platform is taking up to 4 years to distribute the first payment.
Wow. See, now I have not experienced that. I know there is a very well-known one that does wait 2 years. But some of these companies are paying a certain amount up front, and then it's a very long time before you see any more, right? So you might get, like a minimum guarantee up front, and then not see any more, if ever, on the back end. What's happened with a lot of, deals now is that back ends are kind of disappearing, and that's not good. We prefer to deal mostly with revenue share, because we found in our experience with over 1,000 films that if a platform wants your content and they offer you a certain amount of money, it means they know they can make a lot more. So we don't feel like the filmmaker should be satisfied with that amount of money that they're offering, because over time you can have a revenue stream that's like an annuity, if you continue to own your rights. We don't advise filmmakers to sell their movies outright. We really think that your creation is an asset that you should hold on to forever and pass on to your children.
What percentage?
Because now it used to be, excuse me, that when you made a film, it might come out in the theaters and then it would go in the video store, and it would only be in the video store a certain period of time, and then that was it. That was the end of its life, right? It had a very specific life. Now we have films that are still earning well, that we've had for 9 years, and they're not slowing down, some of them. And there's no reason. I mean, now you can watch movies that are 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, right? So there's no specific shelf life anymore. If you create good content, it can be available forever, and you're going to see a revenue stream. If you are working with a distributor that you trust and that you know is going to pay you every quarter. So that's what, you have to just be really careful who you work with.
They filmed The Exorcist movie just a few miles from here in Georgetown. And whenever I drive by there, I always see tourists lining up by the Exorcist stairs and the Exorcist house. And that was that movie was made half a century ago.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about is related to that phenomenon as well. Some movies just have an infinite lifespan. But
Sure.
what percentage of the movies that you think you have in your library or distribution system, what percentage do you think have a very long financial lifespan? 10%, 50%, 80%?
I would say between 10 and 15%.
Okay, that's interesting. So there's a director named Mark Toya who made a movie called Monsters of Man in 2020. And it seemed like he did a great job of not only making the movie, but of getting paid for his movie. Is his movie making and distribution style replicatable by other filmmakers, or do you think his talent is just so unique that it would be hard for other filmmakers to replicate that effort of movie production and getting paid for your movie on a serious level?
Well, there's several people that have made low budget movies that stay popular. You look at someone like Roger Corman, right? His movies are all still out there and available, and they're very low budget movies. And there are a lot of Roger Corman fans. It's become almost like a genre of its own, and so I think particularly if you can find a unique way to tell stories and you're telling good stories, you have a good chance of having a long life. One of my favorite movies of all time is Casablanca. Look how old that is.
Yeah.
I've seen it probably 30 times.
So
it's about really good storytelling, really good acting. And that's always going to be the case. I think what happens is a lot of young filmmakers, they think, I want to make a movie and make a lot of money. And if that's your motivation for getting into it, I don't think you have much of a chance for lasting or making movies that last. You have to create stories that are really meaningful to you, and you can really put your heart and soul into. You look at someone like Quentin Tarantino, his films.
So I think Jack Nicholson started his career out by working for Roger Corman, didn't he?
Yes.
So how is that? I've got more than 100 celebrities on my payroll. How important is it to get a name actor in a movie these days when it comes to indie filmmaking? Is it very difficult? Is it not too difficult? What would you guess?
Well, it has a lot to do with budget, obviously, and it's not just actors. It's also social media influencers. Both of those things can really, really help get your film a lot of exposure. But what's really, really important is that the filmmaker makes sure that the talent that they get, if they get a name, that they have in their contract that talent has to perform certain social media tasks. Because now social media is how people find out about movies. It is the way, especially for independent films, because a lot of independent films in the United States are not going into theaters these days. What's going into theaters are big, huge, tentpole $100 million movies, right? So smaller independent films, no matter how good they are, it really helps to have some talent if you can. And it doesn't have to be the lead, but it needs to be someone that you can feature kind of maybe in the beginning, the middle, and the end, but maybe they're only shooting a total of 4 or 5 days. And that's enough. Like we just acquired a film that has Gary Oldman in it, And he's not in it a lot, but he's in it enough that we can say that Gary Oldman's in it, right? So you know, it's important. And you know, the problem is if you don't have their if they don't sign off on being willing to do some promotion, it's not of value. For example, we took this one film because Snoop Dogg was in it, right? And we thought, oh, Snoop Dogg's in this movie, it's going to really, really take off. Well, after once we released the film and we said to the producers, well, when is Snoop Dogg going to post? It was like, oh, well, he wants $100,000 a post. We were like, what? Wasn't in their contract that he would do any posting for free, right? So there, you know, you've got to be sure that you can make use of the talent. I mean, the studios, believe me, it's in their contracts that their actors have to go on press junkets and do press.
You know what's surprising?
It's not optional.
You know what surprises me is how many influencers are now represented by agents.
Oh yeah, no.
That's getting really common.
They are, because they're making millions of dollars, and the agents want 15% of that.
Yeah. What's more important, do you think? A really clever and unique movie concept, or a recognizable actor on the thumbnail?
Well, if you have a recognizable actor, they should be on the thumbnail, on the poster. 100%. 100%, because what happens is people are sitting on their couch and they're flipping, you know, they got their remote control and they're going like this and they're looking at posters. Your poster, believe it or not, is the most important asset that you have. 100%. Because it's clickbait. And if people don't click on that movie, no one's going to see it. It has to be clickbait. So we always tell people, posters, the most important thing to have that's done professionally. So many times we'll get a great movie and the poster is horrible. And we have to say to them, look, call this guy or call this guy. Here's a couple of options at different price points. You have to have a professional poster. And the same thing happens with the trailer. If, like, we have a tendency to release films first as a paid transaction, you know, a TVOD, so either to buy it or rent it. And we'll do that in the beginning, especially if someone is expecting a very large audience to be there from the start. And we'll wait on SVOD and AVOD until after we see how that performs in that TVOD window. And so in the TVOD window, it's also important to have a great trailer. It's also important to have a great trailer when it comes to foreign sales. So we're just getting ready now for the American film market. We go to 2 film markets every year. We go to Cannes and AFM. And there's a reason that we just go to those 2. We can talk about that later if you want. But those, and we will write to all of the buyers prior to the market. And we will send them, you know, like an email with a picture of the poster and a link to the trailer. And that trailer has to be good, because if they don't get past the trailer, they're never going to watch your movie. You know, and they're not going to be interested in your movie. So the trailer has to be fast. It needs to be chop, 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 chop. And it has to be really, really engaging. So those 2 assets are critical.
So I'm surprised at how fast YouTube is growing. Everybody loves YouTube. Do you think YouTube is going to be the monster of the industry in just a few short years and dominate everybody? What's that?
I absolutely do.
Yeah.
It is already huge. There are over 2 billion people all over the world watching movies there. We have an AVOD channel on YouTube. It's called Indie Rights Movies for Free. And after we've taken a film to a couple of markets and we've determined more or less what foreign territories we're going to sell and what major platforms it's going to be on, we're then free to open it up to the whole rest of the world, right, through our YouTube channel, because that's in over 200 territories that we can turn on, but we can turn off the ones that we've sold. So because they're so flexible, they give you the ability to geo-block, territories that you've already sold it to. But in a year, we've been able to accumulate almost 400,000 subscribers to our channel. And it's our number 3 revenue generator already. So we put a lot of our content on that channel. Now, the thing is, YouTube is very, very strict about content. You cannot have any nudity. You can't have excessive drug use or violence. So we tend to have quite a few thrillers, crime thrillers. And so a lot of times, I would say about half of our content is not really good for YouTube and advertisers on YouTube because it's a little too explicit, and not sexually, but more with drugs and violence and crime and things like that. So those things, you can't put those on YouTube because their community guidelines are so strict. But for the ones that get on there, they're doing really, really well.
Now, Kevin
all
Smith,
over the world.
Yeah. Now, Kevin Smith made the original Clerks movie for about $50,000 in credit card money. Are such low production costs still possible in this day and age when it comes to making an indie movie?
100%. We probably have a couple of hundred movies that only cost $50,000.
Nice.
And some of them make $50,000 a month.
Nice.
It's and I think a lot of the filmmakers that are doing that start out making movies kind of like with their friends, and maybe they offer the actors deferred payment. They're usually not SAG, right? And but we have quite a large number of very successful, films at that budget level. And also, it's easier to do that now than when Kevin Smith did it, because back in the day when you had to use film was expensive to process, right? You couldn't do that back then very easily. Now it's easy. You can have a $5,000 camera. We have some films that people have made on iPhones, believe it or not, that are decent quality.
What do you think is the most lucrative niche these days? Is it horror movies, fighting robot movies? Where is the money flowing these days?
In independent film, I would say it is genre films, thriller and horror. Comedy, the biggest problem with comedy is that it doesn't travel globally. It's very hard to sell internationally because everybody, when you have someone in a foreign language trying to understand American comedy, it's very difficult. So, I mean, we even have a hard time, getting British comedy sometimes, and it's the same language,
Yeah.
So comedy is tough. So it has to be very successful in the U.S. It doesn't often do well outside the U.S. Horror is more dependent on visual than dialogue. So it travels well, right? So it's attractive to a much larger audience than, say, than comedy. So I think, if you look at horror and thrillers and crime, like noir and stuff, that does well. Action does well.
So where are most distributors making most of their money these days? Is it the domestic market or is it the offshore market?
Europe and the rest of the world are way behind us when it comes to streaming and AVOD. They are still very dependent on cable and broadcast, right? But it's starting. So right now, today, I would say 70% of your revenue is going to come domestic, maybe 30% foreign. But I think within 3 or 4 years, that's going to reverse.
What are you seeing with the Chinese market? Is that growing or is it deteriorating?
We used to have a huge amount of sales. We've probably sold 40 films to China, and that absolutely stopped 2 years ago. There's no more China
Interesting.
sales by American companies. Now, sometimes there's some smart things going on where, a Chinese company will buy an American film via a French company or a British company. So they'll sub-license it. So they are starting to try and figure out. And that has to do with our political situation. Until, we are back on friendlier terms with China, I don't think we're going to see much in the way of China sales.
So if you had to guess, how much
But the
more?
Middle East has opened up.
What's that?
But the Middle East has opened up. There's
Yeah.
huge openings.
How big of a market is Abu Dhabi and the UAE? There's a lot of money out there, but are they spending it on movies?
Well, an even bigger market now is Saudi Arabia.
Nice.
Okay, Saudi Arabia, up until a couple of years ago, cinemas were forbidden. There was no public entertainment, but their new government and new initiatives are opening up to sports. You'll see it in sports, music, film, and they now have a big film festival called the Red Sea Film Festival in Saudi Arabia, and they've already built, I think, 2,000 theaters or some, insane amount of theaters. So there's a big market, I think in all of the Middle East now. Now, of course, their tastes are more conservative, than other countries. So there's certain types of films that are not going to play well there.
Now, when you ship a film over there or make it accessible to that market, does it have to be translated into their language, or do they watch the American language version?
I think most people in the Middle East speak English.
Okay.
I actually have a lot of personal experience with that. I worked for a Saudi company for 8 years, and I lived in Saudi for 3 years, and then an additional number of years in the UK working for that Saudi company, and everyone spoke English. And back then, and I don't know if it's still the same, but all of the big construction contracts were all in English. So, English they're quite comfortable watching. And most of the kids go to either England or the United States to go to college and stuff. So they all speak English.
Now, when you ship content over there or license content over there, is it typically G-rated or PG-rated, or will you
Yes.
also tolerate R-rated films?
No, I would say no R-rated films.
No R-rated. Okay. So, what do you
And
think
you know
is
what?
going
I can't say about maybe places like Bahrain.
to?
There are some countries that are more tolerant and open, but I would say in general it has to be kind of family content.
What do you think is going to happen to theatrical movie ticket prices and streaming subscription prices over the next few years? Do you think they're going to increase or decrease?
Well, it's already extremely expensive to go to the theater, especially like if you're going, say you're, a family and you've got a couple of kids and you want to go see one of these Marvel movies, you're looking at spending over $100, right? So I don't think the theaters can afford to up the prices very much, and it's streaming. No, I don't think streaming is going to get more expensive. I mean, I think what's happening is that you'll see what Netflix is doing. They have added a free tier, so you now have some of Netflix's AVOD, right? For $6, you can watch as much as you want, on AVOD. If you want to see it without ads, then you have to pay more. So they're going to do this, and and Hulu has tiers. So I think you'll see that where if you want to watch without advertising, you're going to pay more. But if you, don't mind ads, and, let's face it, I mean, not too long ago, everybody was watching the movies of the week on broadcast and or cable and on broadcast, there were always ads. So people get up, they go to the restroom, they get a snack. A lot of people, And I'm surprised how many people don't mind having ads on movies. My personal preference is not to have ads. I get really pulled out of the story, right? If there's an ad. So I'm fortunate enough to be able to afford to, to pay for content. So I remember back in the day, and it wasn't that long ago that either, where on Thursday night you would go to Blockbuster and you would pick 3 or 4 movies for the weekend and think nothing of dropping $20 down, for a pile of movies to bring home and watch. Now nobody wants to pay for anything. So.
That's so true. I can remember, my wife and I going down to the video store every Friday, grabbing some movies, and you would just hope that the one movie you really wanted to see was still on the shelf.
Right.
So let's say you woke up tomorrow morning and you had this killer idea for a movie. And even though you may have never directed a movie before or produced a movie before, you were just convinced that this idea for a movie was going to be so fantastic that you would get rich. What do you think would be the minimum amount of your savings that you would commit to the production of that movie? Is it possible to do for 50? Do you need $500,000, $1 million? What do you think it really takes if it's your money?
Okay. We're just getting ready to produce a film ourselves. We started our company as filmmakers. We only got into the distribution business because we couldn't find a distributor that we thought was fair, or that would pay us enough that we could stay in the business and survive and have a career making movies. So that's why we started Indie Rights in the first place. So we've made 5 movies, and we're just about to start going to pre-production on a new one. And our planned budget is $150,000, and we are planning on using $50,000 of that for talent and $100,000 for the production. And we own our own camera, so we have a red helium. So, and we have a big editing bay, a very powerful computer. So that cost doesn't factor into it. And so we can easily make a really high production, film for $150,000. And you should be able to do it for 100, as long as you're not looking at special effects, right? You're not going to make a big action film with big car chases and explosions and stuff like that. When people try to do that and they buy these cheap special effects, it shows. It doesn't look good. So it just depends. You have to make sure that you make a movie that you can do for that budget. And people say to me, "Oh, I have to do it in all one little room or one little apartment." That's not the case. The last film that we did, we spent $50,000 or $60,000 on it. We had 22 locations. So it's about being a really smart producer and figuring out how to save money on your production. And there's so many ways now to do that. For example, we did a lot of casting on Facebook. We had a page for the movie when it was in pre-production, and we put up sides for the actors and said, "Make us a reel, send us a reel, a little video clip," right? And we were able to cast most of the movie that way. And we have such great technology now. Now people could just, make a video so easy. They can make a video with their phone, right? So you can really save a lot of money. It used to be expensive to go and rent, a casting office and hire a casting, person and actually have to conduct all of these interviews, and rent that space. And so many things can be done now inexpensively because of the internet. And the same thing with locations. If filmmakers need to network, and meet other filmmakers in their town, wherever they are, I don't care where you are, there's going to be other people in your town, in your city, that want to make movies. And, you network with them and you work together on things. And it's a collaborative art form, right? And it takes a whole bunch of people to make a movie. And if you work together, you can build a team and make things relatively inexpensively. And between all of them, if you know the locations that you need, people can find places that you can film for free. We were able to, on our last film, film in a bar that was in Memento, and they rent to the studios for, I think, like $14,000 a day. They gave it to us for $200, just because the guy knew the owner, right? So it's like, you have to learn how to be very creative. The lower budget you have, the more creative, you can be and have to be. So.
When I worked as a producer for Oprah, there were probably 50 producers on the producers floor. Plus, they had editing, they had everything they needed in the building. And at the end of the day, the technology that we had back then was nowhere near the technology that we have now with just one desktop computer. That's it. That's it. It comes out 4K. It's just beautiful. So it does make a huge difference.
Yeah.
So what are some of the biggest mistakes that indie filmmakers make? Is it shooting a movie in black and white? Is that the death blow, or is it something else ridiculous?
Well, I'll tell you a couple of stories. That is very definitely one. We had someone submit a film to us, and I just thought it was such a unique concept. I loved the story. It was terrific. And the filmmaker shot it on a red camera in 4K, but he was a huge Darren Aronofsky fan. And he decided he wanted that to look like Pi. And so what he did was he made the aspect ratio square, 4:3 instead of, 16:9 or anamorphic or whatever. And he added all of this film grain with the edit effects. Well, when we submitted that film to a major streaming platform, we got our first rejection from that platform, because they have software now that looks at stuff and it must have gone, oh, that's crappy quality. And the guy was heartbroken. And that film is not on that major platform to this day. They wouldn't appeal it, nothing. They can't afford to watch every movie. They don't watch every movie.
So back in the day, when
Oprah that was really bad, and it was black and white.
Yeah.
It was black and white. It had all this graininess to it, but it was fantastic. The story, the script, the acting was terrific, and it's out on other platforms now, where I knew I could get them to actually watch it.
Now, you help distribute films. Do you also help television series get to the show? And is that more challenging or less challenging?
Well, I'll explain. Well, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to add to the question that you asked me before about what mistakes people make. Mm-hmm. Second mistake is they get going too slow. And we discussed this. You need to engage your audience quickly. The third thing they do is they put 10 minutes of credits on the front of the movie. Don't do that. Put the title, the name of the director, and some stars if you have stars. Put all the rest of the credits at the end. Okay? Because people do not want to sit and watch 5-10 minutes of credits before the movie starts. So it's I see it so much. And people think, oh, but they work for free, and I got to make sure their name gets out there. Can't do it. You ruin your chances of success with the movie. And then the things that I said before, make sure that you have a great poster that's bold, and clickbait, and make sure that you have a really great trailer. So those are things that are really, really, really important. And audio. Biggest problem we have with most of our indie films is not good audio. Audio is critical. And the last thing is that people think if they have a really good camera, they don't need to do lighting. Lighting's critical. And just because you have a really sharp image on I've seen films shot on red with no lighting, and it's a shame. They look dark and muddy, and you've got to have good lighting. So those are my, mistakes that filmmakers make. Also, one final thing, check your title, right? Before before you decide on the title of your script or your film, go on IMDb, do some research. We have a film now that there's 10 other films with the same name, and they've been out for a lot longer, and some of them are big budget films. And you know what? Nobody can find their film. They put the name of the film into search for it, and all this other stuff comes up. So your title is really, really important. Keep it short, right? Because it's easy to remember. Don't put weird symbols in it. Don't try to use the F word with asterisks in the middle. You know, stay away from gimmicky titles. I have some that I can barely pronounce. So how's somebody going to remember that to search for it, you know? So titles are super, super, super important. Okay. Now, what was the next question?
So I know not a lot, but a good number of A-level actors who would rather do a 10-part season of Narcos than they would a major motion picture. And I don't know if that's because of the money being offered or if it's because of the quality of the product. Just generally speaking, without naming any names, where do you think these guys are making more of their money now? Is it on something like a season of Narcos, or is it a theatrical release? What would you guess?
So if you take a look at something like, say, Ozark, that went on for, I don't know, 7 or 9 seasons, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, you're going to make way, 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 way more money, because the more popular it is, you know, the bigger the audience it gets every season that it's renewed, you know, you're making more and more and more and more money. So there's definitely a money, you know, thing involved there. It's a lot of work, but it's a steady job. A lot of times, you know, somebody will be in a movie and then nobody hires them for 3 more years or 4 more years. So it's kind of more guaranteed work, right? So you have that aspect of it. But for indie producers, we really don't recommend it for newcomers. It's something you can do when you've really mastered your craft. But we have a lot of new filmmakers saying, oh, I really have a good idea for a series. I want to make a series. We don't suggest it, because what happens is, especially if you don't have names in it, people, if they're not totally engaged with the first episode, they never come back for 2 through 9 or 2 through 7. And it's like you didn't even make them. It's real. We've seen it over and over and over again. Now, we happen to have a really great series out right now called Gravesend. And Gravesend is a mobster series, rather. And a lot of the actors that were in The Sopranos are in it. And so, because it has all that name talent in it, it's doing huge. It's doing great. Right now, they're all on SAG, so they can't promote it. So it dropped off. Once the strike started, it dropped off a little, but it's still doing great.
So you're saying if you have a movie in the can and it's ready to be posted on a streaming service, you can't promote it now during the strike, even though it's done? That's
100%.
interesting.
If it's SAG, the actors can't promote it.
They are
allowed.
That's gotta hurt.
It's really, really terrible.
Wow.
It's really hurting. It's hurting a lot of people. I think if it's truly independent and production and not a SAG production, because there's a difference. There's SAG productions and then there's SAG actors, right? So like if it's a SAG production, you're not going to be able to get a waiver. But if it's an independent film that has some SAG actors in it, which you can do, then you can get waiver. They're issuing some waivers to certain things. Certain projects have been able to get waivers. Unfortunately for Gravesend, Fran Drescher, who is the president of SAG, she has to support the strike. So, obviously she can't, or the cast can't.
Do you see anything approaching the industry on the technology front that either concerns you or technology that you think is going to make you guys a lot more money in the next few years? For example, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I don't think people are going to watch movies on their watch.
Mm-hmm.
It is possible that they may start watching on, like VR headsets. But I don't think that's bad for us. I do hope that AI has severe limitations placed on it, so that actors are not put and writers are not put out of jobs. I really would hate to see that happen. So, and that's a big aspect of the strike right now.
I've read scripts that were created by AI, and I thought they were terrible.
Oh, good.
So they're not there yet. So let me ask you this: with motion pictures, theatrical releases, the first weekend is everything. With indie films, I'm assuming it's a much longer window for profitability. Is that the case, or do the platforms just get rid of them if they don't get any views within the first month or two?
No, I don't. We aren't experiencing any platforms dumping films quickly. I would say if something is up there for a year and it's not making any revenue, then it risks getting dropped. And we have seen, they'll clean house every once in a while. But if you're making any decent level of revenue, they don't drop it. There's a cost involved for them. The streamers, they're paying to store that stuff on many servers, right? It costs money. We pay a storage fee to store our stuff in the cloud, and all of the streamers have to pay for it. So if their storage cost is costing more than they're earning, they are going to drop it, right? So you do need to be earning some revenue if you want your film to stay up there, and that's why we really educate our filmmakers about something that a phrase we coined is post. After post-production is post, and that means you have to post about your film after post-production. So, and they're scheduling software so that you have to continuously be pushing some promotion out there, on your film, or it's going to start to trail off. It's rare that we have a film that will, keep generating really good income year after year after year. We have some.
Do you think that Twitter might eventually become a media company that will allow you to watch movies and TV shows just like YouTube?
It would. I doubt it, because Twitter is for short form content. I mean, it wouldn't be Twitter anymore, or X, or whatever you want to call it. It wouldn't. Their whole business model is based on short form content, not long form content. So I don't think so. And the same for like TikTok. I don't think TikTok or Twitter will ever be much for long form, for full feature. And boy, I'll tell you, it's going to be tough for anyone to try and compete with YouTube. YouTube is so far ahead of everybody else.
It's amazing. You sit down for what you think will be 5 minutes, and then 2 hours later, you're still stuck.
I would say we watch as much YouTube as we watch movies and streaming and television, because we have so many different interests. Like, we like to look at French chateaus that are being renovated, right? Or, travel shows. I mean, so we really we watch a lot of YouTube, for relaxed time.
Well, Linda, it has been great having you on the John Ark Show. Before we wrap things up, is there anything you would like to promote?
Yes. Well, we'd love to encourage any filmmakers that have a completed film to go to our website, which is just indierights.com, and submit your film to us. We'd be happy to consider it for distribution. If you're looking for good content to watch, try our Indie Rights Movies for free, our YouTube channel. You'll find things to watch.
Nice, nice, nice. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I want to wish you all the best to you and your family. And you're always welcome back on the John Ark Show, my friend. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Honored to have been here, and it's a pleasure to share with your audience.
Thank you.